Spencer Hendricks, you're a turkey.
Oh.
Brian Vaughn, jive.
Groovy.
Now I get it. I really didn't understand what you were going to do there. When
You
said
just
I'm a
assumed
turkey.
I was legitimately
I was
insulting you as a turkey.
accepting it. It's like, oh, okay. So why didn't this open with the flute solo instead of the Wonder Woman soundtrack?
They saved that for the outro.
Okay.
Well, we are, of course, the Bootu boys. We're talking Wonder Woman. That was the Wonder Woman theme song you just heard. And we have quite the episode in store for you today. It's about flutes, or a flautist, if you will.
It's about one of the best and most persuasive musicians of the American 1970s.
Actually persuasive, too.
He knows what he's doing, man. He's got the mustache to persuade anybody out there.
That is an interesting mustache. Like a kind of a pencil mustache, I guess.
Do you think he had to shave into that, or do you think it just happened?
I don't think you can, because that's too thin.
It's the rare mustache that only grows directly above the lip, but does not get near the nose.
It's like that director, John, can't think of his name, John Carpenter. No, he has a big thing. John.
That bothers me so much, because I thought I had it immediately.
I know what you guys
and
are talking about, and I can't, it's not coming.
All right, well, we'll see if by the end of the episode, one of us comes up with it, we get to force the other to do something stupid.
Okay.
Whoever comes up with it.
That's fine. One of us is going to get there.
I think we'll get there eventually.
It's also all I'm going to be doing. I'm actually not going to participate in this episode. I'm going to think about who this director is. No, I'm kidding. This episode is too much fun for me to tank.
Yeah, you're going to want to participate in this one.
That's the best to do to jog your memory anyways, to think about something else like flutes.
Yeah.
And then it'll just pop in your head next time you try to think about it.
And that applies for every situation. Just think about flutes and whatever you were trying to think about will occur.
Unless you're trying to distract yourself by taking in some nice flute music, then you might not be able to think about anything for a while.
Like you're trying to unwind for the weekend, put on some Zamfir.
The king of the pan flute?
Master of the pan flute. He's transcended any sort of position.
He's just the master.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we get into Season 3, Episode 6, The Pied Piper of Wonder Woman, I have to ask both of you, has there ever been a moment in your life where you've sat down for any period of time, perhaps extended, and listened to flute music?
No.
No.
No, and I didn't really think there was really a market for it, to be honest.
I listen to enough dorky metal that sometimes flutes get in there.
Huh. Well, see, I was in concert band, I guess is what you would call it officially, in middle school from 6th to 8th grade. So I heard flutes play. You know, they did their part in the song that we were all playing together as a band. But no, I never was like, God, I wish everyone else would just leave and I could just listen to the flute section.
You were
by
never
themselves.
jealous of the flutes.
No, I sure wasn't.
You should be. They're like the sexy instruments.
I don't know where
They're not-
Interesting
they're not-
stereotype I've never
where
heard.
would you get
Not
that?
at all.
You're thinking of piccolo players.
What is a sexy instrument? A saxophone?
I guess.
Guitar? Like, that's the best. Otherwise, you're just a horn and you're going, brr.
If we have to leave it to just the concert band instruments, it has to be saxophone. What else could it be?
Oboe.
Maybe a trombone, just from the, when you look at it, the motion could be.
What do we think about the kind of sultry tones of the bassoon?
I mean, I like it as an instrument.
Okay.
I don't know how it works.
Doesn't it symbolize when the big bad wolf is coming?
Right, and that's
Yeah.
kind of hot.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, everyone
There's
thinks
a
that wolf
sense
is
of
sexy,
danger,
sure.
you know? It's got kind of a baritone sound, right? What we're trying to do is just figure out which instruments we're having sex with, right?
Correct. Well, tuba.
Drums have holes in the back of them. Really big ones, though, because it's a big drum.
Oh, you mean like the giant one drum?
Like a drum.
Yeah, okay. Not a drum set or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll transition into the show then, shall we?
Hold on. I have it in my notes here, actually, that it is the flute that is the sexiest instrument.
Oh, so I was right.
Yeah, I forgot that I watched this episode, which kind of clears up any problems we might have had in that department.
And by the way, recently, maybe a month ago, perhaps, I got on this thing. It's when I discovered Zamfir, Master of the Pan Flute, and I listened to like 2 hours worth of pan flute music. And there's this one Native American guy.
Consecutively?
Yeah.
What, were you doing something and like that was just in the background?
Well, what initially started it is a YouTube video popped up of King of the Hill, where Hank Hill is talking about Zamfir, Master of the Pan Flute. And I was like, what is Zamfir, Master of the Pan Flute? And I looked it up and became addicted. And then I messaged that to Brian, and Brian's like, no, I remember Zamfir.
Of course
you
I know
fucking
about
idiot.
Zamfir. Apparently someone wasn't watching infomercials at 2 in 1999.
Which is patently incorrect, because I most certainly was. I just don't remember it. So I believe you, though.
When you posed that question to us and you said, have you listened to flute music? Your big reveal is you have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew why I asked the question because I wanted to talk about
This guy's a bit of a flute slut. He's posing the question as if, I wonder if anyone in the room has been listening to flute music lately.
Did you pick this episode because of that?
No.
Okay.
I picked this one because I saw Gargantua and was like, well, I'm doing this. And then I looked up, like I often do, what are the worst and best episodes?
Oh.
And one said The Pied Piper. I saw Martin Mull, and I saw Rock Flautist. And I was like, well, okay, I'm doing that.
Rock flautist.
The combination here, Martin Mull, rock star, flute player. All of
Gargantua.
that, it doesn't, none of it makes any sense, yet you watch it, still doesn't.
Yeah, and this episode that we're covering features 2 major cameos. First, we have Martin Mull. We've mentioned him. He's the nefarious, wispy-mustached rock star Hamlin Rule. That's his name, Hamlin Rule. And Martin Mull has been in a lot of big things, including his awesome performance as Colonel Mustard in the 1985 movie Clue. That's what I most recognize him from. I love that movie.
I had no idea that was him.
It's hilarious. He was also Roseanne's boss and friend Leon on, you guessed it, Roseanne.
Which is how I came to know him first.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he played Detective Gene Parmesan on Arrested Development. A great role. Mull is actually still acting today. He's going strong. And without giving too much away, he's real good in this episode.
Martin Mull is a capable comedic actor, and I think he knows exactly what he's working with in this episode, The Pied Piper. I was pretty blown away by how much he gives to the role.
And he's pretty clearly having so much fun doing
Yes.
this.
Yeah, every emotion is cranked to 11. And a lot of times, spoiler, he's a bit of a villain. He's the big, as all one-offs in a superhero series would be, right? All guest stars. Pretty
Yeah, they
much.
don't come there to like outshine the lead character.
Or to show up and be like, hey, I'm going to help you for like 15 minutes and go away. But he's the villain in this episode, but it's not just the villainry that he cranks up all the way. When he's meant to be sympathetic, he goes all the way with that too.
That pendulum swings wide and far. We have another cameo, though. That is from Eve Plum, who is, of course, Jan from the Brady Bunch. She's a girl that's caught up in the fast-paced world of professional flautists. And Spencer, you, of course, covered the Brady Bunch earlier on this very year. So listeners out there, go check out the Brady Bunch episodes. They were a lot of fun somehow. Don't do that now. Finish this one, but then go check those out.
Eve Plum, that makes her a 2-time BTB.
Somehow, when I did the intro to Brady Bunch and talked about Eve Plum's background, I did not mention that she was in this episode
Shame
of Wonder
on
Woman.
you.
Did you guys recognize her pretty easily?
Not easily, but I get
didn't-
it now.
Yeah, I didn't really see it.
I
honestly.
recognized her, but I knew she was in it, so I was kind of looking for her.
But I think if you come into this blind, you'd be like, I recognize her, but I don't know. That would be the best you could possibly have.
It would have been easier if she would have said Marsha, Marsha, Marsha to Hamlin Rule.
Or when she was in his house with all of his platinum records or whatever, took them and put them in the closet.
That would have been great.
I will say Eve Plum does look a little different too because she's dressed not as much like an idiot here. In the Brady Bunch, everyone's dressed in like nondescript clothing and made to just kind of look off, I think. It's kind of what we talked about before. Everyone's tan, blonde, and in like non-logoed, not interesting clothing.
The Brady Bunch is a very creepy group of people.
You say nondescript but off. I agree with that in Brady Bunch. For this show, it's descript but off.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how it
But to me,
changed.
that's the 70s. Is
Well,
just
yeah.
like people thinking anything looked good. I actually kind of wish that would come back. Like you could just put any two things together and someone would say that was fashionable.
Like, let's say hot orange jeans
Okay.
and a red Hawaiian shirt.
I'm
That
told.
is fascinating. I'm in completely.
Let's get into this episode, but remember, before we do, we are no longer in the middle of World War II. We have advanced 30 years in the future and find ourselves in the dirty, dirty 70s.
Now, are we past Vietnam?
That is a good question. I don't know the exact year.
We're around there, though.
They sure don't talk about it. We know that.
I would actually assume that we are because the show started in 77.
Okay, yeah.
So probably if they're going to modern day, they're going to 78 or 9 or whatever this is supposed to be.
It would have been great if they still had Nazi villains.
But it is the
And
70s.
it's supposed to be in the 70s.
The episode then begins with the comic book / live action intro, just like last time, but the theme song has been jazzed up a little bit. It's not quite like what we experienced happens in the 4th season last episode, but it's also a little crazier than season 2 and 1.
Let you know, this ain't your daddy's Wonder Woman theme song.
She comic books and lassos a bunch of stuff and cool 70s stars pop up and then it fades to black. Intro over. It's a fun one. It's
Pretty
long, but it's fun.
It's kind of cool. I like this next thing better, though.
We then focus on the White House solely because we are actually in Washington, D.C. We get a title card that says a rocking, rolling Washington, D.C. to be specific. But we don't just have traffic sounds or a theme song playing. No. We're also hearing a very synth-up beep and bloop song and this is air quotes, singer performing the hit song Love Conquers All by Seals and Crofts, which was featured in the movie One-on-One, which is about a small-town basketball star going to college.
Now, this time, though, it's distinctly talked by Martin Mull.
That's why singer is in quotes, because Martin Mull is a musician, apparently, and he can sing. Doesn't do that here.
No. There is a certain charm to it, though, like a tossed-off charm, and the performance itself is a rousing good time to watch.
We get an establishment shot of what I can only assume is Madison Square Garden. I mean, this is the number one performer at the time.
It's in the White House. Jimmy Carter personally was like, bring me Hamlin Rule.
Now that I can see, actually.
In my peanut farm, I'm going to listen to Hamlin Rule.
I know the kids think I'm just a simple farmer with plain ideas for working folks, and some even think I'm a bit of a pushover, but when it comes to my musical taste, I rock as hard as anyone with my flute music.
And we see a marquee here which proudly displays Hamlin Rule, the Pied Piper, rock concert tonight. And they keep saying rock. And I think this is why Norman was anti-rock.
I get it, because this is shitty. When you guys think of 70s rock music, late 70s rock, this to me feels like a mix between like adult elevator music and 60s flower power stuff, which that's a theme that to me continues throughout when we hear other songs in this episode.
I have to think that Jethro Tull influenced this character a bit because Jethro Tull had been out and Ian Anderson was a flautist and all that. And that's like the only mainstream success rock
but that's like
band.
prog music versus like, Seals and Crofts song.
But I think that's why they were able to say, people buy this. This flute guy is
People
successful.
buy there's a badass who plays flute. But we're going to really fucking push the envelope. We're not just going to ask them to buy that. We're going to ask them to buy that Martin Mull is that in a jumpsuit.
After seeing the marquee, we shift inside the arena where a sold-out crowd is cheering and sitting quietly. And I mean, there's like over 15 people here. It is sold out.
I love how some of them are standing and some of them are sitting, but they're all clapping like really hard.
On stage, we see several synthesizers, a drum kit, and the star of the show, the Pied Piper himself, Hamlin Rule. The camera starts far away, but quickly gets jarringly close to Hamlin, who's wearing a white and gold bejeweled suit with a puffy pirate shirt on underneath, and he has like cuff frills. It's very poofy.
The shirt is not buttoned at all.
Hamlin himself has a groovy 70s mullet and the porn-stariest blonde wispy mustache you've ever seen.
Hey, he's wearing glasses. They're not tinted, are they? They couldn't. Oh, yeah, they are. They're the most 70s glasses you could ever imagine.
If you have glasses in the 70s, they have to be tinted. In fact, Diana Prince, we see later, doesn't have tinted glasses. She gets fined daily for that by the cool police.
Everybody makes fun of her. Big deal, you're Wonder Woman. I've got glasses that are dark.
Hamlin Rule is here singing and pointing and looking at all the young women throwing themselves at him with those beautiful baby blue eyes. The concert keeps going on, and we shift backstage to the manager's office, where a guy that looks an awful lot like Peter Graves from Mission Impossible is locking a giant wall-safe vault and sitting down at his desk. Hamlin on stage whips off his bejeweled jacket, revealing that his pants aren't just pants. He's actually wearing like a romper, but the top is a vest.
Uh-huh.
It is quite the sight.
All of this I've never seen before. It's like they thought, what if we combined Elvis, like the look of Elvis and David Bowie, and some unknown creature, just roll those all up into one and then make music no one's ever wanted to listen to. Just that's the package we're presenting.
The Elvis thing is perfect because they absolutely were trying to suggest that's the kind of energy level that's at this concert. Like the screaming teens at the
and
Elvis
it's all
concerts.
girl.
Right.
And that a lot is made of that. His audience is all young women who just are so drawn to Hamlin Rule for his appeal. And may I be clear that if he's Elvis, he's toilet Elvis. This is not prime Elvis.
Elvis, at the end of his career, was toilet Elvis, too. Let's be fair
That's
about
what
that.
I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
This version, Hamlin Rule is not prime Elvis. He's toilet Elvis.
Well, after Hamlin tosses his jacket away, he points into the crowd, and they go fucking nuts because they know what's about to happen here.
I didn't, and I was surprised.
Well, he reaches behind him and whips out the one thing that every good rock song has, a flute. He toots away at it for a bit, and then he uses it to point behind him where the spotlight falls on this just enormous 45-year-old man who's dressed up like a genie of some sort.
This guy's arms are huge, and so are the amount of years he's lived.
The genie guy picks up a massive wicker basket and brings it to the front of the stage. Meanwhile, a bunch of black women are scampering around backstage.
Hold on.
Well, I don't mean
Yeah.
African-American women. I mean, they're just like head to toe in black.
Yeah. They're like,
They're in stockings almost.
what do you call that?
It's like pantyhose, but full body.
I've never seen anyone actually wear this because it doesn't exist. How would you get out of it?
It was kind of cool. Like I like their choreography, how they went in there doing that, and you don't really know what exactly is going on. So that caught my interest when I saw
There
that.
actually is a certain bit of anonymity to it, too, like just seeing like a dozen people that you can't really see.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool.
These women approach the manager's office and whip out some sort of small device with a radio cone on it, like a satellite dish. The lead woman pushes some switches and some buttons and points it at the doorknob to the office. And the knob begins to glow a potent red as some radio wave sounds just kind of happen.
Yep.
The knob is then suddenly turned into a pile of metal ash, and the women are able to enter the room where Peter Graves is busy probably just signing his name over and over again on a paper so he can get that G just right. And back on stage, the genie man has placed the wicker basket next to Hamlin, who is now fluting away really hard at the basket, when suddenly a giant papier-mâché snake kind of comes up out of it. The camera shows the adoring crowd occasionally throughout this. My favorite instance of all of this is we focus on a particular girl in the audience who's sitting there very quietly, but she's smiling that kind of sensual smile that ladies do when like you bite your lip a little bit. It's how
Eve felt when she saw the snake in the garden.
The girls in black then point their weird device at Peter Graves, and it makes some more goofy noises. He slowly closes his eyes, places his head and hands on his desk, and falls asleep. Kind of sweet.
Yeah, gentle.
I wouldn't mind someone hitting the sleep button on me every now and then.
If I had that, I'd use it every night.
Yeah,
I can't
sounds
sleep.
Great.
The girls then move over to the giant safe and use their device yet again to melt the combination lock on the safe, with it too heating up to super bright red before just disappearing into ash. All the while, Hamlin Rule is still playing his flute at the papier-mâché snake, which has risen several feet out of the wicker basket, when an explosion happens right in or in front of the basket, and suddenly the snake has been replaced with a woman in a tight green suit.
Yeah, she's a snake woman.
And she's just kind of dancing a little.
Hamlin Rule can flute someone from snake into woman.
Hamlin continues to sing and flute at the snake woman while the ladies enter the safe and start stuffing duffel bags full of cash. And with the final, "Love conquers all," Hamlin Rule, the snake woman, and the old genie all take a bow in front of the clapping and cheering audience.
They've earned it, too. The Thieves, did you guys like the special effect of how they hit the button and like the doorknob just erases?
And then it turns into a little pile.
You know who probably did the special effects for this? Neil Breen.
I was wondering how believable, we're going to say it is, that at a concert, like, you know, you get the sold out rock concert.
Right. 40, 50 people.
Sure. Yeah. No. And there's a guy in the back, like a bank vault, just counting all the bills and stacking them together and putting it in a safe. I don't know that I've ever seen the thought of, well, you know, if you want to really make a killing, you got to go rob a music place right in the middle of their concert.
I guess if I want to seriously argue this, it's the 70s. Nobody has credit cards. You pay in cash. There's got to be a lot of cash coming through when 20 people are there. 20 people giving $5 each. That's a lot of money.
We hear some dollar figures later that are enormous.
Yes.
This would make a lot more sense if, again, this is an arena and we see these women sneak in and have to get past like a lot of guards. But this is like a mom and pop theater guarded by one elderly man. You know what this sounds like is that fucking bank from Rawhide. Yeah. Grandma could have done this same thing that all these spandex women did.
Maybe this is her origin story, but placed in a different time.
This could be her grandkids.
We next shift to the Interagency Defense Command Headquarters. That's IADC. That's the organization that Diana works for and Wonder Woman helps. And Steve works for, of course. Oh, sorry, Steve Jr. works for.
Not the same guy.
Which I would have never known if you had not told us at the beginning of the last episode.
Well, he does look a little different, but it's also just like a 70s white man. They all look the same.
Yeah, I couldn't tell the difference at all. Did not register it whatsoever.
Diana Prince is here, and she's ran into an old man in a brown suit named Joe. Diana notices something is up with Joe, and after she asks how he is doing and gives a canned response, she reiterates to him, No, Joe, I really mean it. How are you?
And she's real handsy with him even right away, like, Joe, I'm so concerned.
She paws at this guy the entire show.
The whole episode.
Is she supposed to have, like, fatherly affection toward him or something?
So.
Like, oh, I think of him as another father.
But man, this guy is he is so sad the whole time. He's such a bummer.
How could you tell? His eyebrows are growing into his eyeballs.
They're huge.
You can't tell what he's thinking.
He almost looks like Gargantua with those eyebrows. And Joe just says he's a little tired because he has a single parent syndrome. Yes, the 60-year-old man who's a single parent to a child.
My daughter's Eve Plum, I promise that could somehow work.
Right away, I was like, why are you raising a 34-year-old?
By now, Steve has arrived, Steve Jr. So the three of them go into some fancy room with a bunch of different colored phones on the wall, and there's a tiny screen on the far wall opposite a table with some chairs. A fancy presidential seal comes across the screen, and I honestly don't know if this is the president or if this is just the leader of the IADC, but we don't see him. It's just a voice, kind of like Charlie's Angels.
Could even be like a computer like in Bible Man that's talking to them.
So it could be, I thought I'd think of it by now.
Lucy.
Or the other one, the evil one.
I think that Lucy's the evil one.
What's the
Lucifer.
good one?
The good one's named like, I don't know, Ephesians.
But anyway, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm going to call him the president and assume it's the president. And we get a kind of hillbilly voice pops out and says, Good morning, y'all. I'm a little over my head here. Take a look at this. The screen there then shows us the exact same awesome concert we just saw and just watched for 5 minutes.
Any president would be concerned and think they were over their head if they watched that.
Well, the president then says, pretty cool.
Again, this is Jimmy Carter. I'm a big Hamlin Rule fan.
Now, what actually happens here is, while Steve, Joe, and Diana watch this cool-ass concert for free, I might point out, Diana explains exactly
Hamlin
what they're
Rule
looking at.
Not like that.
That's Hamlin Rule. He calls himself the Pied Piper. I just bought his last album. As they say in the trade, it went gold in a week. It was 20 with a bullet on Monday, and by Friday, it sold 1 million copies.
Yep.
That's how people talk about stuff they like.
It's a great throwaway line there. Yeah, I just bought his album last week.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Hamlin Rule fan.
20 with a bullet.
What does that mean?
Meanwhile, in the background, flute.
But no, seriously, what is the 20 with a bullet mean?
I've never known with a bullet. I never got that.
I know it signifies importance, but why?
Does it just mean like it fast? It real quickly shot to the top? I don't know what it means.
You know, that's a pretty good guess.
As good
if
of one as we're getting.
Let us know what that means.
Steve then mentions that Hamlin performed in D.C. last night. That's where they are. And Diana says the kids camped out all night just to get tickets. I totally buy. Watching the Hamlin Rule performance, that children would wait in line 72 hours in advance to get a ticket. I buy it.
Do you guys have your Hamlin tickets for November yet?
It's actually my favorite new play, Hamlinton. Lin-Manuel Miranda can work magic.
Or what about your other favorite play, Hamlin?
Like in Road to Revenge, whenever he starts to speak Hamlin.
Yeah.
Of course.
I could buy Rick Bodie's favorite musician being Hamlin Rule.
Yes.
That would fit.
They kind of look similar.
But while the concert video plays, we do see that one girl who is like sexually seductively biting her lip as she repressed her feral sexual desires, and a concerned look washes over Joe's face, which Diana catches onto. She notices it. The president or whatever says during the course of the concert, the entire box office take was, and Diana chimes in saying, ripped off? So the president says, well, it's a little rude to talk over me, Jimmy Carter.
What do you think this is, a fucking podcast?
Well, yeah, that money, it was stolen. He continues and reveals that a total of $172,000 was taken that night. I did the math. Did you guys?
No.
Well, in today's money, per the inflation calculator, which I consulted, that would be the equivalent of doing $867,637 in one night.
That's a good night work for the Pied Piper.
It's especially impressive because you realize they must have been charging, like $60,000 a ticket?
Precisely. Hearing all this, Steve asks the correct question to ask, which is, what does it have to do with us here at the IADC, sir? The president reveals the local police requested help because, as we know, the doorknobs and safe dials were just burned away, and the manager remembers nothing about the event. Diana points out that this is a recurring pattern, actually, because it's not the first time a Hamlin Rule concert has been ripped off. It's happened in Philadelphia, Boston, other places.
More than one, I think they'd already have been on this, right? That's a little weird.
After $1 million a night? It turns out that Hamlin is actually performing in Los Angeles next, so Steve says they need to go out west so they can get ahead of this thing. We got to figure it out. We're then back in the manager's office at the event center, where the guy who was the genie in the concert is wearing some really high-waisted blue jeans and a canary yellow shirt that says, Hamlin Rule, Pied Piper, written on it with a picture of Hamlin's face. Never wanted a shirt more.
It is incredible.
It's so good.
Wouldn't look as good on you as it does on jacked-ass Carl, though. What is this old man doing?
Yeah, he is like 45. He looks like he's 45
Yeah.
and huge, like 6'5",
Yeah.
pure muscle. He's just massive.
Guy could lift a car over his head if he wanted.
So he's not like bodybuilder strength, though.
No,
He looks like he just
practical.
is that. Yeah, he just kind of woke up one day and was that size or was born that way, perhaps.
He could be a logger.
Maybe he was. We don't know what he did before this.
We don't. Well, it's lager. We've solved it now. But I will add that he has a little boy bowl cut haircut, which does not gel with the rest of the look. It's like 3 different series of jarring thoughts when you see this guy.
And also, this t-shirt is like 3 sizes too small, so between that and the boy haircut, it's pretty funny.
And he's here telling the manager that Hamlin Rule still expects to be paid for the performance last night, regardless of whether or not the money was stolen. The manager frantically explains, yeah, I'll pay you. I'm good for it. I just need a little bit of time. Maybe by the end of the week, it'll work. The genie guy says things like, we'd like the bucks before we split, and you dig, and if I have to play handball with a bouncing check, I'll bounce you. Diana is then prepping to leave for L.A. when Joe enters the room and explains what's going on with him. He talks about his young daughter, who's going to college at UCLA, and how she's suddenly acting really weird. She begged him for money for a flight, but then when she took it, she didn't actually see him. She didn't stop to say hi. She just returned back to UCLA. He also received a letter from the dean saying that she's failing. Something is up here because he knows his daughter's a good girl.
Yeah, this isn't possible. It's now, while watching the episode originally, that I did a little research thinking, we know his daughter is supposed to be, I think, 19. I think they say
Yes.
that. How old is this fucking actor?
He's
Is
64, right?
55.
55, that's it. Sorry, but I knew it was too old.
No, that makes sense.
Oh, wait, 50, hold on.
So he could have been 36 when this child was born, in reality. Now, a 70s 55 is a hard 55.
it sure is.
Because that is a 65-55 if I've ever seen it.
We learned that in Mary Tyler Moore with Lou.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
even younger.
Yeah, when he was like 31 and looked on death's door.
And Joe continues saying that this morning during the meeting with the president, he saw his daughter right there on screen. Turns out it was that lip-biting girl. This is not good. Diana, upon hearing this, figures it's going to be a good idea to bring Joe along instead of Steve for this mission. So she tells Joe this, and he gets super excited and says, okay, I'm going to go pack for the trip. Like, he's genuinely
Yeah,
excited
he gets
about
to
this.
see his daughter, and as a side benefit, Hamlin Rule's there.
Speaking of Hamlin Rule, we find ourselves next in Bel Air, California at the pad of Hamlin Rule, which is the title card. what the
Another
title
one of
card
those
says.
cutesy title cards, which fit the show really well.
And we hear a haunting melody that is not a flute, but it plays, and we see a dozen swimsuit-wearing women standing and sitting perfectly still while staring at Hamlin Rule, who sits at some patio furniture table wearing a Hawaiian shirt and tooting away on that flute. Well, let's go ahead and play this melody, because it shows up about 50 times in this episode.
You won't be able to sleep tonight.
And that just has to be a synthesizer, right? It's not a flute. I know that.
Everything you hear in this episode seems to be some sort of synthesizer, which they were like new then.
The big genie guy is also here, but he doesn't seem entranced like the women are. The camera slowly pans across Hamlin's flute as he plays it. We get a real good look at that mustache, the best we've seen so far, and it is gross.
If you've ever wanted to see Martin Mull's lips up close playing a flute, here's your chance.
Finally, he stops playing, snaps his fingers in the air, and suddenly all of the women immediately go back to doing normal things. They're reading magazines, playing cards, or just kind of wandering around the pool. Hamlin refers to the women as little doves hovering around my bird bath, only he doesn't say that. He says, little doves hovering around my bird bath. And that's not quite like Warwolf territory like from Brady Bunch, but I do think it's controversy from Turbulence 3.
I think this is a character decision. I think that's exactly how Hamlin Rule says hovering. I think he says hovering, and I think he does it on purpose because that's just how he jives, Daddy-O.
Hamlin then asks Carl, who turns out to be the genie man with the little boy haircut, if he wants to swim. But Carl's wearing his earplugs to avoid the captivating flute sounds of Hamlin Rule. He hasn't heard anything, so Hamlin yells at him a bunch.
That's a constant in this episode. Lots of yelling at poor Carl. Second consecutive one we've covered with a big old henchman named Carl.
Oh, wow, it is. I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I will say that was a really obvious opportunity right there for her to be like, here's why Carl's not affected by the flute. Carl, get your goddamn earbuds out, you piece of shit. They had that whole thing there where you can see why, okay, when I play the flute and Carl's not bothered by it, that's
Which
why.
I feel like the notes would have just deflected off his muscles anyway.
Maybe there's not enough going on in that head that he could be captivated.
He's got a lot of little comeback phrases stored in his head, though.
I think Hamlin's just kind of a little too mean. No, a lot too mean to Carl, because I think Carl's a good guy overall. He does some bad things, but it's because of the people surrounding him.
Hamlin takes Carl for granted so bad, and you really feel for Carl. You get a sense they've been working together for a long time.
And he's never respected him either. You can tell Hamlin Rule's always just kind of been like, Carl's the muscle, he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and this happens with every flautist-genie relationship.
We find out they are doing their regular interviews later in the day. We don't know what that is, but they say it.
What is the non-regular?
That's for every couple of months when you need to replace the keyboard player who stands off to the side. Because we see a keyboard player's back. He never turns to face the crowd in the concerts. He's got a big afro.
That's all we know about him.
For every Hall & Oates, there's a keyboard player that you don't know the name of. The two talk about how they've gotten almost $500,000 from their whole scheme. And Carl asks how long they're going to keep doing this. Hamlin says, we'll keep going until we bust them out the way they busted me out for all these years.
Already we know Hamlin has a big old chip on his velvet shoulder pad.
Carl hears this and says, so we're going again, huh? As if he wasn't just told that they were going again. Carl asks if Hamlin's afraid that they'll get caught, but he says, how are we going to get caught when it's these little birdies doing the robberies? And he gestures to all the women.
They'll never trace it back to me. It's happening at all my concerts with people I associate with doing it.
And Hamlin basically yells at Carl some more, and Carl heads off to put on his genie outfit, while Hamlin picks his flute back up and plays that same haunting melody, which causes all the women to freeze in place, including the lip biter girl. She's here. That's Joe's daughter. Her name is Elena.
Is she really Joe's daughter any longer? Or is she merely Hamlin's plaything? Do-do-do-do-do.
They continue to get way too close to Hamlin's face here, too, but get used to that. Diana and Joe have now arrived at the LA branch of the IADC and discuss their plan, which involves Joe doing bureaucratic paperwork stuff and Diana heading off to meet with his daughter at UCLA. Joe is a real sad puppy of a dad here because he's concerned for his daughter, and it's kind of cute. Like, a lot through this episode, I'm like, oh, you're a good dad.
Probably the best dad of the 70s, if I were to guess.
Diana then goes to UCLA, but couldn't find Elena there, so she instead heads to Hamlin's estate, where she's told she's going to be hanging out. But Diana can't just walk through, though, because Hamlin is a security guard at the gate who asks if she's here for the interview.
Now, hear me out here. Wonder Woman walks up to you. You're the security guard at Hamlin, or Diana walks up to you. You're the security guard at Hamlin Rules, who just has a house full of women. You probably would just tell her to walk right in.
And you're not a very good security guard, are you?
No. I don't have the right accent for it either.
He asks her if she's here for the interview. She says no, and instead asks if he knows where Elena Atkinson is. And the guard says, lady, I wouldn't know where Elena Atkinson is if she turned up in my soup.
That is not an exaggerated accent. That is really how this guy talks.
I couldn't keep track of all the pussy Hamlin's got strutting in here.
Man, I should have learned to play the flute when I was younger.
Just then a couple of other costumed ladies show up, and the guard checks them off the list as belly dancer and, ooh, fairy. And he sends them in. He tells Diana it's some sort of interview to be in the Hamlin Rule concert as the girl in the golden basket, who turns into a snake, of course. The only problem is you got to be in costume. So he tells this hideous, ugly bitch Diana, get lost. Diana walks back to her car as a very 70s waka chicka music just starts up. A couple of other women show up dressed as Little Bo Peep and some sort of bird. Diana doesn't get in her car, though. She instead wanders off to a secluded area, I guess, takes off her glasses, spins in a circle, and then explodes, thus turning into Wonder Woman.
Happens a lot quicker this time than last week.
But this time she has like a cool America cape.
Yeah.
She didn't have a cape
Actually,
before.
we should note the costume is better.
It is way better. The diaper doesn't look like it's full. It just looks like a snug diaper.
It looks more like a costume on a human, not like a costume on a human with some stuff to kind of put in it, wires and pads. And
the boobs aren't as pointy or blocky or whatever, so they've definitely fixed the costume.
I wonder why. Did the costume industry make a bunch of technological improvements over the course of 1 year?
I would say they must have more of a budget, but look how realistic Gargantua looked.
You can't top that.
Wonder Woman then gets stopped at the house by Carl, who is now dressed up in his genie outfit again. He asks if she's here for the interview, but before she can answer, Hamlin pops around the corner and is mean to Carl again.
He couldn't help himself.
He says, "No, Carl, she goes around posing as Wonder Woman all the time."
No, Carl, that's Wonder Woman.
So Hamlin yells some more at Carl, and they let Wonder Woman in, join the other women out by the pool. And this is a good example of Hamlin being mean to Carl and then turning around to the Wonder Woman and being kind of sweet. And he's like, "No, come on back. This will be great." And Martin Mull does a great job shifting between the emotions.
Yeah, he totally does. Treating his assistant, Carl, and Jeannie like a dog, and then sucking up to women to get them to do his bidding.
Wonder Woman winds up standing next to Elena, who is like a full foot shorter than every other woman there. And Hamlin walks by her and kind of seductively pokes her in the shoulder. He gives a little bit of a sly grin as he does it. After he passes, Elena turns to Wonder Woman and says, "Isn't he a fox?"
Perfect 70s lingo.
Wonder Woman then quips, "I get the feeling we might be the hens. Because foxes eat hens."
Mm-hmm.
Gobble,
Because
gobble.
foxes play flutes at hens.
Which Elena just kind of looks at her like she's fucking nuts when she says that.
No, we're human women.
Hamlin explains to all the women there that for every stop in his tour, he selects a different person to be the girl in the golden basket. It's an honor, much like being chosen Miss Galaxy, only way better.
That line made me laugh.
Well, in this scenario, you know why it's way better? Because you get to hang out with me, Hamlin Rule.
And he said that perfectly, too. He's like, it's like Miss Galaxy, except better.
It's a perfect example of Martin Mull seriously doing a good job at this.
And it doesn't hurt that he's dressed up like Evil Knievel.
Yeah, it's just a hammy role, and not just because his nickname is Ham.
Hamlin says it's now time for the hard part, selecting the winner. All these beautiful women are winners, but only one of you can become the girl in the basket. He walks past each of the women, eyeing them over and occasionally putting his hand on their faces. He makes it to Elena and Wonder Woman and gives a big grin to a very delighted Elena before asking if Wonder Woman ever worked without her tiara. She says no, and he goes, "Bummer. Guess it's got to be you then." And then he looks directly at Elena, who lights up with joy having been picked.
So happy. Did you think he was going to pick Wonder Woman?
I didn't think so.
I did, for some reason.
I did
so
too.
I
thought
was a
that
little
was where
surprised.
it went. Yeah, is that Wonder Woman had to pretend to be, or possibly even really does fall under his spell when she's Diana. I don't know. Does the belt protect from flute stuff too? I know it makes her invincible.
It does, because later in the episode, we find out she's not impacted. She pretends.
Okay, I thought she really was.
I didn't know if that was the belt or if she just wasn't, because she's from Pleasure Island.
But when she's Diana, she is impacted.
Oh, okay.
Mm?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Mm.
All right.
It's all
I like
falling
this.
into place now.
Show's awesome.
We've learned the flute hierarchy and all that.
She was a hard no on the tiara, too. Like I mentioned this last week when I said I wanted to talk about the tiara a little bit. But yeah, he asked, I don't guess you take that off. She's like, no.
Well, she's a princess. She's princess of Fantasy Island. That's the one with the little guy. The plane.
Yeah, with
Paradise
Hervé. I don't
the
know
guy
his
who's
name.
Khan or whatever.
Yeah, he was in a James Bond movie. He was
Yep.
in The Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah, I can't think of
Hervé
his name.
Villechase or something like that?
Something.
I didn't pronounce that right.
Oh, you're talking the little guy.
Yeah.
But Ricardo Montalban is
yeah.
the other main guy, and he was.
But isn't that the little guy?
yeah, it is.
He's in Fantasy Island.
Who
also.
apparently, when he worked on that James Bond movie, fucked a lot, and
Yeah.
most of them prostitutes. But
He had a lot of substance misuse issues, I
he had a
guess.
thirst, my friend.
Yeah. Lived hard.
And that's one of Hamlin Rule's rules. Just got to live life hard, man.
Yo, foe. You only flute once.
Wonder Woman looks kind of upset that she didn't get picked here.
I like to think part of her did want it. Still,
Sure.
even though it's not real.
And you know this isn't a true determination of worth, but
No.
it's still nice to get that feeling of winning.
Yeah, just to know that you could be coaxed out of a basket and turned from snake to woman.
Hamlin, though, so he walks by a bunch of women that he ends up not picking, but for some reason he doesn't pick Wonder Woman, but he does talk to her a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like he wanted to pick her, but just couldn't.
Well, there's a reason.
You
She's
seem
too
like the
tall.
main character. I'm going to park myself here and talk to you for a little bit.
Yep, she's just a little too tall, Spencer. In fact, Hamlin tells her if she were around during his bicentennial tour in 76, she would have been perfect.
I hope he ad-libbed that too. It seems like the kind of thing that wouldn't be in the script.
Now, Hamlin Rule is basically established as the villain this episode. We know that. We get it. But face it, he's too cool to be bad. He addresses the other women in the crowd and tells them they may not have won, but you get a consolation prize.
Now, for the rest of you, you can hang out if you want to. Anything you want, just ask. And I mean anything. Because this is where it's at. And if that's not enough, I'll see you all get an autograph picture, okay? Follow me.
He is just having a delightful time while recording this episode.
Just so aloof, too. Like, I'll even let you have an autograph of me.
The theme, like the setting of this party, you know what it reminded me of a lot, which I believe all backyard pool parties look like?
You're going to say it.
I'm going to do it.
Do it.
The Dr. Barry Mayfield
Columbo.
party in Colombo.
Yeah.
I think every party in California in the 70s looked like this.
Well, this is a 70s pool party. I mean, this is probably what they're like. Usually Columbo's there to ask questions, though.
And pester
and eat all the
doctors.
fruit.
Oh, yeah, and complain that his heartburn is up.
Excuse me, Hamlin Rule.
I was watching you flute the other night. Instead of sticking around for an autograph, surprisingly, Wonder Woman instead sneaks off to the side to change back into Diana, I assume by spinning the opposite direction, like you reverse the whole thing. She's wandering around Hamlin's house and comes across Elena sitting on an enormous purple velvet chair, and Elena's staring straight ahead, not blinking or seemingly breathing. Diana snaps her out of it, and Elena recognizes her, but surmises that her dad must have sent her for her. Elena happily brags about being cast as the girl in the golden basket, but just then Hamlin and Carl arrive in their respective Daredevil and Genie outfits, and they tell Diana if she's a reporter, she needs to get out. Diana explains she's a friend of Elena's, and for some reason, Hamlin asks her, "Who are you?" immediately followed by, "What are you?" They verbally spar, and Hamlin says he's going to make Elena a star, so get lost. Carl ushers Diana out of the room where Elena ignores her protests, and it's clear to Diana that something's off here.
Huh, I thought it looked all normal.
On first glance, this looks
Totally
by the
above
book.
board. Yeah, this is how people live.
Hamlin remains in the room, closes the door, and turns on some sort of strobe light while whipping out his flute and playing that same haunting melody we heard by the pool. This causes the young girl to go in a trance again, and Hamlin begins grilling her about who Diana was and finds out she's a special agent, and Elena's dad is also a special agent. Hamlin just keeps fluting, and Elena just keeps trancing, which is not trancering.
No,
No.
that's
Trancing.
different. That involves time jumping.
Jack Death would have to get involved if that was happening.
There'd be more Tim Thomerson. Every scene where the entrancement melody is played by Hamlin, the camera cuts between Hamlin playing the flute
A
and
little sweaty. He's getting real worked
sweaty and his eyes are bulging, and then whoever he's playing the flute at looking just totally zonked out by it. It is really disorienting to look at too because the cuts are so fast.
And probably 15 minutes of the runtime.
Yeah, and it happens 15 different times for 1 minute each.
Why does he need the strobe? Is that like for a real intense hypnosis that he just can't do with a flute by itself?
I think that's the programming, because he can hypnotize them with just the flute. But when you want to hypnotize them and teach them to do something, you got to have that strobe light, baby. It's the 70s.
You think it would work on Gargantua?
No.
Nothing would.
No, you just need to use electric stuff with him.
Electric stuff. This also explains why his thing would work better at like a concert, because he could have strobe lights
Yeah.
And it would fit.
in the venue.
Wonder Woman! Wonder Woman! You're Wonder Woman!
Back at the LA IADC building, Diana is in Joe's office with a real big poster that says, "In concert, Hamlin Rule at Cleft Concert Hall."
Pretty
This
cool.
will be in the office the rest of the episode, front and center.
I wish that it was for the rest of the series. Joe just puts it on the wall.
Diana reveals they figured out what happened to the safe at the last place. Turns out that they were vibrated apart, which caused metal fatigue to the lock's molecular structure.
Got tired.
Those are the words. Yeah, it was worn out.
Glad that doesn't happen to like my car.
It disintegrates.
Too tired, falling apart.
I think somebody worked really hard on how something could scientifically create that.
Like, that's bullshit, but it's not also because, like, I get it.
There's
I get what
enough
they're going
there, yeah.
for.
It's just that someone really stretched that.
Joe says the scientific community has been working on that kind of a device for years, but has never come close to the success that this has had. They mention they need to do a stakeout at Hamlin's next concert, and we find out Joe has phoned UCLA a lot and never once was able to talk to Elena. So he's dealing with work and professional stuff here.
It's a lot at once. I wish someone during this conversation had said it could only be a top-level mind, a scientist of no peer who created this door dissolver, this safe opener, to kind of give context to the fact that it would be a remarkable scientific invention.
But all you need, my friend, a flute.
A flute in a dream.
Diana tells Joe that she spoke with Elena already and assures him that she's okay. She's just got some crazy dream about being the girl in the wicker snake basket. But don't worry, I will convince her to go back to school.
And that's most teen girls anyway.
Yeah, everyone has a phase.
Yeah, being in the wicker basket.
Joe is obviously upset about this, but like the good dad he is, he agrees with Diana and just heads off to his meeting. Diana then makes a phone call to the Delta Theta house, and a long-faced girl answers at a pay phone, which was very time-specific. It turns out this is Elena's roommate, who reveals to her that Elena can be found at the Allura recording studio, where Diana quickly heads off to, and I don't like that there's Elena followed by Allura, and then there's another name that's very similar later.
Yeah, well, this has been happening a lot. This happened with the Deborah Shane, Artie Shank thing in Street Hawk as well. It makes it confusing to talk about as well. We see so many payphones in Wonder Woman, and some of them look cool, but my favorite, I forgot to mention this earlier, but since you brought up the payphone in the dorm, the payphones at the IADC, where it's supposed to look futuristic, that they just have, or not payphones, but rotary phones. They have like 4 rotary phones tacked up on the wall, and that's supposed to be like, whoa, technology. They're different colors.
Yeah, that's it. There's
They're
like a
all
red
just
one.
rotary phones. Like, we can call at the same time, you and me.
At the recording studio, Diana asks a receptionist, who somehow has the worst haircut of all the horrible haircuts in the show, if she could speak to the manager like a real Karen might do. But eventually, she's told to go to Studio B, which is down the hall, last door on her right, so off she goes.
I also think the idea of a recording studio just having like a manager is funny.
Just hanging around.
I don't think that exists. I think there's like a person who owns it and does everything, and that's all there is. Maybe another guy that helps them.
The Beatles had to deal with that receptionist at Abbey Lane.
And the manager. Yeah, the bureaucracy of these recording studios.
Diana arrives at the studio, which is dark and empty, and as soon as she enters the room, the door slams and locks behind her. Then the lights come on, and we see the shadowy visage of Hamlin Rule and Carl behind the glass, demanding Diana sit down. When she refuses and tries to leave, Hamlin continues to yell at her to sit down, and she continues to refuse, so Hamlin whips out his flute, and what do we hear but... This is 8 times we've heard this,
yeah.
probably, something like that, and certainly not the last.
I lost track because I would be hypnotized each time.
Well, I just kept coming to in a wicker basket.
Now, this is, of course, Diana. This isn't Wonder Woman. I don't think she has her belt on. She doesn't have her tiara
She
or
wasn't ready for
thing.
this shit.
She hadn't done her spinning.
Because of that, the melodic flute noises work, and she goes into a trance, her eyes gloss over, and she instinctively sits down on a velvet-padded dentist chair, where several velvet restraints click into place, just holding her in that chair. Hamlin stops playing the flute, which causes Diana to become sentient again, but of course she's strapped to the chair, so Hamlin says just a whole bunch of 70s stuff.
How about a little rock and roll, Diana Prince? Nothing like a little bubble gum to relax the bod.
Who are you?
Hey, can't you get out of that secret agent bag? I'll crack the whip. And you take the trip. Now,
He's having so much fun. I'm jealous of how much fun he is having.
This music sounds very 60s to me.
Yeah, the hippie flower
Yeah,
stuff. It kinda
yeah.
does. Hamlin realizes Diana isn't going to crack so easily, so he tells Carl to wait outside and make sure no one enters. Then he says he's going to give Diana Prince a little class in music appreciation. But to make sure she pays attention, he decides to make her very nauseous, so he turns on the button on his audio mixer, which makes her chair spin around a lot and really
Yeah.
fast.
Every studio has that. You know, this is the one person you don't want to spin, though.
Yeah, what happens to Diana Prince when she just spins a bunch?
Turns into Wonder Woman.
I actually originally thought that was a really cruel form of punishment, like a torture thing. I was like, wow, that is awful. And then I realized that can happen even when she's not doing the spinning, which I didn't know.
Evidently.
That's like having a torture device that force feeds Popeye spinach.
Which also sounds kind of a cruel torture. Did you know this about her? Like that it doesn't matter if she does it intentionally, it can just happen?
Only because I'd read like the wiki where they make a point of saying the show got novel with its ways she transformed into Wonder Woman. There's another instance where she's falling in the sky or something and transformed. So the writers sat down and said, let's do this as like a gimmick almost.
Let's find some new ways for her to morph.
It makes me wonder how she first discovered she was Wonder Woman. Like she was 7 and she went in a merry-go-round.
Probably
and then
puberty.
They spun her around and all of a sudden she was Wonder Woman.
The first time any kid spins.
You guys are very wrong. She's, of course, Princess Diana, daughter of Queen Hippolyta from Fantasy Island or whatever. We hinted at it, but Diana obviously explodes, turns into Wonder Woman, and manages to break out of the chair, rushes to the door, which she rips the handle clean off of. And in the hallway, she runs into Carl, who says, "You again? Are you the real Wonder Woman?"
Carl has his suspicions. I mean, he's seen now twice Diana and Wonder Woman in the same building.
She responds, "Don't make me prove it." Yet Carl rushes her and she flings him into the brick wall behind her with some cool whoosh sounds. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
His punch was comically slow, though, when he raised his arm like, I'm gonna come down with this Carl punch now.
Well, you saw Gargantua do the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how all punches go.
They had to telegraph it.
We also don't know that Wonder Woman doesn't have some sort of specific, like, motion slowing power
So we're
against...
seeing it from her speed.
And specifically against henchman named Carl.
And apes.
Yeah. Because this is two henchmen named Carl, and there will be an ape later in this episode. No, I can't even tease that. It would be a false promise.
Yeah, that would be mean. Well, Carl rushes up to her and gets her in a big bear hug, and eventually the two Kool-Aid man their way through yet another door, and they wind up in the recording studio again. Carl says, "Let's just see how strong you really are," and he grunts and groans and picks up what's supposed to be a huge speaker that should weigh like a ton. He hoists it over his head, flinging it at the superhero, and Wonder Woman easily catches it, and then chasing Carl down, flings it into the large man who is wearing a knit sweater vest.
This made me laugh. It looked petty almost when she threw it at him. Also, I believe both of them could throw this back and forth. One is a superhero, the other one is Carl. Very strong man.
Carl approaches Wonder Woman and rears back to throw a really big punch at her, but she ducks, and he ends up punching a microphone, which then spins around and bonks him in the back of his noggin, knocking him unconscious.
The noise is really funny when it hits his head.
She's a little quip, too. She says, "Heh, that's one way to use your head." But she does notice a piece of paper sticking out of his pants.
After she just kind of mauls him a little bit, she just rubs on his body. It's like, oh, there's a note.
I wish it said Carl Groceries.
And she's so sweet, she'd probably go shopping for him and leave him those groceries for when he wakes up.
Oh, Carl, now you're not going to have time to run to the store.
Or it just says Carl Groceries and then flute.
Banana.
Genie costume.
She opens up this piece of paper and realizes it's a blueprint for the floor plans at the concert hall Hamlin Rule will be performing at in the next day or so. After this, Diana and Joe are later discussing the various thefts that have happened during the Hamlin Rule concert and trying to figure out how it all happens. They're trying to find a reason that everything's connected outside of its Hamlin Rule.
There are top government minds here trying to figure out what are the common ties between these 4 massive robberies.
Now, Diana obviously knows Hamlin is flute controlling women, but she doesn't know how the women are getting the safes. That's what she doesn't know, so she kind of plays along.
Yeah, the rest of
Joe.
it makes total sense.
She tells Joe, who says some more sad boy stuff about missing his daughter, maybe he should go out to UCLA and try to talk with Elena again. He gets real excited because he's a good dad, and he runs off. At Hamlin's place, he's now holding Carl's genie hat in his hands and talking to Elena, and he makes a mean joke about Carl being dumb again.
He's talking so much shit behind Carl's huge back.
Elena, of course, laughs and says, "But he was a good friend of yours, right, Mr. Rule?" And Hamlin goes, "Mr. Rule? That's my father. Call me Ham."
Ham Rule.
Which is also what Carl would say when he was eating ham. Hamlin says some more mean stuff about Carl. He also mentions the hummingbirds out there, meaning the women at the pool, saying he's going to use them as long as they're here. People show up, might as well flute at them. He tells Elena that she's going to take Carl's place. She jokes like, as a bodyguard, and no, I can hire any muscle. You got brains.
I like that the first time Elena shows a lot of doubt about Hamlin is when he starts trash talking Carl. That just crosses a line for her.
And just kind of jumping a little bit, level jumping their friendship. Like,
Yeah.
I want you to be like in charge of my entire brand.
Yeah, he says, I want you as a financial advisor. Apparently, Elena was majoring in business administration, so Hamlin says, well, guess what? You graduated. Hamlin cum laude, School of Hard Rock. She mentions being the girl in the gold basket or whatever, and he says, forget about it. The real money's behind the scenes. Here, I'll show you. So he then drags her over to some velvet monstrosity with dumb shit all over the place, pulls out a device that the women were using to destroy the safe and the doorknob at the concert hall, and he pokes and prods and pushes buttons and stuff, and he points it at this cool bird statue in a bird bath outside, and the bird statue, like the doorknob and the safe knob, begins to glow a fiery red before finally poofing away in a pile of bird statue metal.
And at this point, Elena knows I'm dealing with a man who not only can control me with his flute, but can evaporate bird baths. I mean, if you're dealing with a villain that can do those things, you can't hope to escape.
You're in trouble.
You might as well just let him take over the world at that point.
Elena's having a real tough time figuring all this out, just wrapping her brain around it. She says, I don't understand. And this really pisses off Hamlin. He switch flips and he becomes just mean to her. He pushes her down into a seat and turns on some jaunty 70s porn music, holds up the device and says, scientists have worked on this for years and years, yet it took me, Hamlin Rule, the Pied Piper, to perfect it. She asks why he would need something that destroys because his music is all about love and happiness, and from what we've gathered, it's about love conquering all, and that's it.
Yeah.
He says, that shit you're talking about, that's for the squares. When I'm on stage, I give them what they pay for, and they get what they want. In fact, everyone gets what they want, everyone except me, Hamlin Rule, the Pied Piper. Elena asks him what he wants, and he reveals his grand ambitions. He says he wants everything. And this was a little aggressive for this villain. I thought he'd be like, I want some cool stuff, not everything.
Hamlin Rule feels very wronged.
Hamlin wants to rule. Elena's not cool with all this supervillain shit, so she apologizes and says, I'm out. This is too much for me. He pushes her down and tells her she's controlled by his music. She'll remember exactly what he wants her to remember and nothing else. She's no different than the rest of the women here, except that her father is a government agent. Now, can you dig it, Elena? He says, can you dig it, very loudly.
He does. Another 70s thing.
A look of terror washes over the young girl's face as she listens to porn music and gets yelled at by a young Martin Mull with a mustache and a blonde mullet, but the scene ends. Before the concert, Hamlin is now sitting in front of his mirror in his pink and red 70s sex romper, powdering his face, when a dejected Elena peers in through the beaded curtain and tells him the rest of the girls are ready to go. She tells him she really doesn't want to do this or go, so he says, maybe you need a little traveling music that could take away your stubborn streak. Pulls out his flute.
What's it going to be? What song?
This goes on for a bit, and Elena's face kind of glosses over. It's here that I had to back away from my screen because we've talked about this. They keep insisting on showing their faces very close.
I thought
They got too close.
Because you didn't want it to work on you.
Well, it's partly that, but I didn't want to reveal that I'm a coward, Brian.
Yeah.
Hamlin finally puts down his flute and gives Elena a gun. He tells her she's already been programmed how to use the gun because she's like, I don't know what to do with this. He's like, no, we already got it covered.
That was on day one.
He tells her, don't worry, though, it's not a real gun. It's just that Wonder Woman has been snooping around, so if she wants to try and meddle again, he's devised a little something for her. In fact, it'll be a gas, man.
So the gun shoots gas out.
What? How would you come to that conclusion?
What did you guys think of Martin Mull's little romper he's wearing in this scene? It's red and white.
It's amazing. Each one greater than the last.
Looks like a big old candy cane.
I feel like he is, in this scene, kind of just leaves any semblance behind it. First, he was kind of, he's playing all this out. He's a calculated villain, and then he just loses his shit at this point of the episode and goes nuts.
He's full supervillain. You could have had him frothing at the mouth here.
And even his hypnotized girl is like, I don't think I want to do any of this.
Diana and some 70s dude are now hanging out just outside the concert hall where Hamlin Rule is performing, which for some reason looks identical to the other concert hall that had his name on the marquee. I don't know.
It has to be a different place. The show wouldn't try to do the same, use the same thing twice.
That's silly. And you know what else, guys? Love conquers all.
I was going to ask you what song Hamlin was performing and what he was doing in his performance.
It's his one super hit song. He's performing it to a crowd that is eating it up. But we can see that Joe has been planted in the manager's office of this concert hall, or perhaps he just moonlights as the manager of a concert hall. He's sitting at the desk, counting all the money, writing things down, so it looks like he's doing the concert hall work.
He fits the part, too. He's gray.
Mhm.
And I do like the idea, though, that this sort of undercover cop has to do the actual job of the person they're undercover
Did they have
as.
to train him, or is he just like, nah, I know what to do?
I'll figure
I've
it
done
out.
This.
I've been a concert manager for 20 years before I was a cop for 40 years. I'm 60 years old.
Part of the IADC training program is learning how to balance receipts.
What if he does that after the whole shift and he's like, you know what? I think this is for me. Like, I
Change
really
your
like
career.
this career.
Venue management and accounting is my real passion.
He puts all of the cash he has into the big safe behind his desk, and Diana radios him confirming that everything's okay. They're in communication. The only problem is everything is not okay. The ladies in black show up, and Joe hears a noise outside the office. He radios to Diana that something is happening and tiptoes over to the door to see if he can hear what's going on. But on the other side of the door, the ladies are using the magical device to burn through the doorknob. And somehow, after they burn through the doorknob, the door just fucking flies through into the room and smashes Joe into the ground.
Super funny.
He goes down like a pile of books, and the girls scamper in to break into the safe, doing the same thing they always do. Turn the handle red, turns it into dust. We get it. Diana leaps out of the car knowing something is wrong and finds a nice empty corner to twirl in. Boom, she's Wonder Woman again.
It's like the 14th time this episode.
Meanwhile, Joe has come to his senses and he whips out his gun, pointing it at the thieving bodysuit women. When one of the women points the magic device at him and makes some boing boing noises, which causes Joe to just collapse and pass out. Having collected their prize, the ladies rush off but are intercepted by Wonder Woman, who tells them, "Hold it!" One of the ladies, presumably Elena, pulls out that gun that Hamlin Rule gave her earlier.
Fart gun.
They fire a couple of shots at Wonder Woman, who instinctually blocks with her bulletproof bangles, only like Hamlin said, gas. It's a gas. It means there's gas in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of stops Wonder Woman for 8 seconds.
She's confused for a second.
It's not long. Like, they're still within eyesight after she's regained her composure.
It can't affect her, really, because she's Wonder Woman.
But the ladies do manage to escape. Once she does get her bearings, Wonder Woman decides not to chase the women, who are still pretty close. Instead, she decides to go check on Joe in the office. She helps the old man to his feet, and he's very disappointed he didn't do a very good job, because he's a good dude. He wants to have a good impact on the world.
Would have been funny if Joe was like, Wonder Woman, why do you care so much about me? Why didn't you just go follow them, get them? This is what Diana would do.
Unfortunately for all of the people involved here, they deduce that the music or sounds or whatever mess with your memory, so they don't have a clue what the device was. That's the one missing link. They don't know what the device is.
They ought to know what that melody is by now, though.
Hamlin's back to his usual routine the next day as he's giving away autographed photos to several women who auditioned to be the snake in the golden wicker basket or whatever. He's here with Elena while he's also wearing a shirt that's as orange as his skin is. It's like matches his skin tone, which I don't know if it's weirder that the skin's that orange or if the shirt's that orange. It's bizarre.
Both are artifacts of the 70s. Mustache, orange. Kind of.
Yeah, it really is.
Little
That's
bit.
as orange as a mustache can get. Once the ladies are gone, Hamlin tells Elena that this may be the last group of girls he ever needs. He says he simply has no need to program those little birds anymore. Elena takes this to mean that he's giving up all the crime stuff, but he says, "No, Elena. I mean, you did such a good job. I don't need anyone else."
You can see the Joe and Elena there. She sees the good in Hamlin. Oh, you decided to be done with crime and just do music. That's what I wanted. No, I've decided you have to do the crimes by yourself.
Yeah, he's planning on forcing her to take over the entire scam completely. So she's going to be Carl. She's going to be several
What
black-laden
does he
ladies.
see in her where he's like, this whole thing is you now?
Yeah, I don't
All of
understand that at all.
Well, she ought to be happy now. He's not asking Marcia to do it.
But she really doesn't want to do this, and she even tells him that. And this enrages the flautist, who says, maybe this means we need to do a stronger serenade, and Hamlin drags her back into the flute and flashy light room. Back in Joe's office, he refuses to share a sandwich with Diana as they work on the case.
That's how you know he's really
Stomach
upset.
just can't handle it.
But a knock on the door has an, air quotes, officer who's wearing like a blue-ass suit, the bluest suit you've seen, with, of course, big tinted glasses, comes into the room. And this is not a police officer at all. He says he has something for them, and he's not sure what it is. It was found on the floor near the safe that was recently vaporized. The guy hands the thing to Joe, whose face just drops when he sees what it is. Turns out it's a bracelet or some piece of jewelry. And he solemnly hands it off to Diana, who reads an inscription on it aloud. It says, Elena, happy 16th. Love, Dad. He knows his daughter's in on the Hamlin Rule scam.
Oh, man.
I guess they don't suspect Hamlin yet. Maybe Diana does.
I have to think Diana does, because she immediately thought she was a hen, when he was described as a fox.
And just thought, he was a horrible piece of shit, clearly, when she was interacting with him.
Right. Hamlin, though, I think, to your point, Van, he's banking on the fact that no one thinks he'd rob his own shows because it's stupid and doesn't make any sense.
Diana tries to ease Joe's mind here by saying that bracelet could have been planted there, but Joe says, yeah, well, it also could have been dropped by her in this big kerfuffle.
That is the other thing it could have been. Someone might have planted it, but it could have been her.
Diana should have countered with, yeah, that is true, as if she didn't even think of it.
And then, her eyes drop, and she's like, oh my God, Elena's in on this.
Joe, your daughter's a criminal.
Never mind, the planet thing doesn't make any sense.
But Diana does, in fact, say, no, Joe, that doesn't make sense, because the only thing that could explain this is that Elena is brainwashed. They just can't fathom that she would ever do anything.
This is Diana making the gorilla leap from our last episode, where she immediately thinks the wildest thing possible is true, and it is.
That's the problem. That's the Baywatch thing.
That's
that one kid being like, maybe it's electric eel, and then it's a fucking electric eel.
Yeah. It's a problem with all shows that are dumb. They essentially have to have the hero make leaps that no person could make. However, it's charming in Wonder Woman.
It is. Diana asks this officer guy if he could keep this bracelet information under wraps until she has a chance to pay a visit to Hamlin Rule. And after saying Hamlin's name, she turns and looks at the concert poster and basically points at it, because it's still prominent here in this scene. The camera zooms right in on Hamlin's face, and the cop says, you got it. So he's going to hold back the info. Elena's in the flute and light room this time with Hamlin Rule, who is busy using flute and lights, and I guess going really hard this time, because Elena's sitting in another red velvet chair like a foot away from him with her mouth agape and her eyes glossed over, and Hamlin gets delighted by the process here, and then he just kind of scampers off.
Martin Mull is physically playing the flute more.
I think that he has, in his frustration with her, he's gone too far. He's programmed her to the point where she's about to break.
Yeah.
Because you can see the circuits in her head, and she's like, please make it stop. Like, it's not even working anymore. It's just hurting her, and he just won't quit.
I kind of wish the flute had started, being on fire during this part.
Well, I mean, it was on fire, but I understand what you mean.
Right.
That would have been a great way for him to end all his shows. It just,
it would be, yeah.
just goes up in flames.
There are, towers that burst into flame in the back of the show occasionally.
Right. Well, you have to have a few. It's a basket of snake women, flames,
flute,
Carl.
Audience of maybe 10 to 12 girls who are captivated.
That's all you need, man. It's more about being everything to 10 people than something to 1,000,000.
So our podcast, then.
Yes. Obviously, this is my philosophy.
Joe and Diana arrive at Hamlin's house now, and Joe, who's just seeing red, starts to angrily leave the car. But Diana holds him back, telling him, look, you're upset. Maybe it's best I talk to Hamlin alone, not Wonder Woman, me, Diana. And Joe says, you know what? I am an unbelievably reasonable man, and I really value what you have to say. So, okay, I'll sit in the car and wait. So he does.
It is a bit at odds with, you asking me to come out here on the trip that my daughter might be involved with. That was kind of personally involved too, but I'll overlook that. This makes sense now.
So Diana then heads toward the house, but presumably 4 feet from the car, decides to do her little spin and explode routine and transform into Wonder Woman.
Again.
She had to be right in front of the car. So Joe's just there waving, watching this happen.
Well, I'll be damned. There's Wonder Woman.
I'll have to tell Diana about this later.
Who disappeared from my eyes, but I'm like a toddler. I don't understand. If you're not in front of me, I don't think you'll ever come back. Wonder Woman needs to get into the house. She doesn't want to deal with that sassy gatekeeper again. So she decides this time she's going to get in by flat foot leaping 30 feet in the air. And I'll be honest, I didn't know she had that power. I knew she was strong. So this took me by surprise that she just launched herself into the house.
I did know because she played in the NBA from 79 to 85.
Oh, really? Was she better away, or was she a close player?
She could dunk from the free throw line easily.
30 feet jumps.
Actually, from half court.
We also had the signature music there, just to symbolize the power and the magic and the jump. Something like, woo!
Wonder Woman then rushes up to the pool, where we get to see an artsy framed shot for the show. The camera's behind Hamlin Rule, who's looking out at his swimming pool off to the side, and he sees our hero fling a couple security guards around. One of them gets tossed into the concrete by the pool, The other one gets tossed into the pool.
That'd feel better.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to be wet for like 6 hours for the rest of my shit.
And they do have all that tactical gear on. It would be heavy and wet.
I don't like it. I think I'd rather have the concrete. Maybe not now as an adult because my bones are bad.
Maybe
But
it'd shatter.
Hamlin rushes over to grab his doorknob evaporating device, and Wonder Woman makes her way into the flute and light room to try and save Elena, who's just kind of sitting in the chair drooling on herself. But before she can get the girl free, Hamlin enters and tells her to hold it or he'll use his device on her. Wonder Woman grills Hamlin, asking why he's been robbing his own concerts, which is a valid question, to which he replies, "That bread belonged to me."
More 70s, delicious 70s lingo.
Like bread. Both delicious and 70s lingo.
Yeah.
70s bread.
No, nobody eats bread anymore. That's so 70s.
Hamlin sneaks over to his mixing board and pushes a button which plays, get this, it plays this. But I guess this is kind of like a game changer, right? He doesn't have to play the flute himself. He can just play a recording and it works.
I feel like this is a recording artist. Maybe figure this out sooner.
It seems this flute noise is doing the trick because Wonder Woman struggles to hold her composure. She reaches up to her forehead and puts her hand on it as she struggles a bit, but then yells, "Psych!" and casually throws her tiara at Hamlin. This knocks the device out of his hand as the tiara boomerangs back into her hand. I don't know if it always boomeranged back, but I bet it did.
I bet so. That seems like a built-in part of the power.
Well, you know what? Maybe the recordings don't work. Maybe Wonder Woman is susceptible to the flute, but he played the recording, and that's why it
I guess
didn't
we
work.
don't know, and we'll never know.
No, because he didn't play it live to Wonder Woman. Hamlin flees the room, and Wonder Woman stops the flute recording before whipping out her golden lasso of truth and chasing after the Pied Piper. Hamlin doesn't get very far, probably because he gets caught up in the thick, heavy, hideous carpets of the 70s. They're disgusting.
Shag.
Imagine how gross they would get so quickly.
Ugh.
With all those swinger parties they were having back then.
On the carpet,
Yeah.
too. So there's just cum stains everywhere.
That's why the
Yeah.
shag carpets were installed. It's like, that'll be easier for the swingers.
It'll be softer when you're on the ground. Wetter, too, but that is a problem.
I think if you got like water on that carpet, it would take a full 24 hours to get dry at all.
It would feel like walking around in a marsh.
Have you guys ever been in a house that had the shag carpeting front, like original 70s shag carpeting?
Yeah, my house, well, I don't remember this, but I know that I was in one for years, or like 3 or 4 years growing up that had.
We had one in the downstairs part of the
Ooh.
house my dad still lives
The
in.
swinger room.
Yeah, the den. It's clearly a room built for a pool table.
Ah.
It's long. It's too long to be a functional living room, although my dad uses it that way. And it was not anymore. They replaced it with an equally dated Berber carpet in the 90s, but it was like 6 inches long. You go in there and it feels like you're walking in lush grass.
An indoor jungle.
I know I've been on that kind of carpet, but I don't remember when. But I have experienced that stuff. It's wonderful.
Well, and that's the Columbo line where the cop tells Columbo, he's like, "Yeah, you ever been in one of those houses where you're ankle deep in carpet? You know that's
Yeah.
living." It was luxury. Anyway, shag carpeting.
Top of the line. Now, Hamlin Rule may have a flute noise that can hypnotize women. He may have a little satellite dish device that can melt bird statues. But Wonder Woman, she's got tricks up her bangles, too. See what I did there? Not sleeves, bangles. Huh? Because
Didn't have any
She didn't have sleeves. None. She's got a diaper. It turns out when she lassos someone with her golden lasso of truth, it forces that person to then tell the exact truth to any questions she may ask. They can't lie. And I think they're discombobulated a little because he sure is. But that
Well,
may just be him.
He's kind of been that way.
She takes advantage of the situation and says, "You call yourself the Pied Piper, but the real Pied Piper led children from danger," which is not real at all. Do you guys know the story of the Pied
I thought
Piper?
the Pied
Yeah, I
Piper was
think
an
he
evil,
killed them.
dark thing. Yeah.
And it's one of those grim fairy tales. So
Yeah.
the original is, but then people twist it over the years. No, what happens with the whole Pied Piper story is the Piper was asked to lead all of the rats out of this town. And so he does with his flute playing. They follow him because they're rats. Rats love flutes. We all know that. It's fact. But then the town refuses to pay him for getting all the rats out. So he says, "Okay, I got an idea." And he flutes a bunch, and all the children in town follow him, and he leads them into a lake, and they die.
Feeds him to the rats. So it's really just like the Pied Piper in Wonder Woman. He felt disrespected by not getting
Paid.
his money, not getting his credit.
So he leads innocent people into a lake.
Right.
You want to know what the other connection here is?
Yeah.
The town in Germany in which the Pied Piper story was originated, its name, Hamlin.
That's great.
Huh?
Man, they were doing some work here.
I think it's a coincidence.
But anyway, Wonder Woman continues. She says Hamlin was given a gift, the gift to make powerful, thought-provoking flute music, but instead he chose to use that gift to force children to steal money for him. She just wants to know why. Why would you do such a thing?
You're the poet laureate of a generation, the most talented musician in the history of the world. Why would you throw that away for something so simple as cold hard cash?
Hamlin sighs, and he says some shit that actually got me on his side for a bit.
He real quickly turned in kind of a sob story. At
Yeah.
this point. He's like, well, it's because it's not fair.
I hinted at this up top. Martin Mull goes nuts here, too, playing sad. Just the way he did all of his other emotions. He makes it pretty outsized.
It doesn't matter what the emotion is, he dials it up to 10.
Yeah.
Hamlin mentions that when he was coming up, of course, as a fresh-faced recording artist who hadn't sold billions of records because he's, the top performer in the world, he was playing for pennies on the street. But once he started to get attention, suddenly the record producers and publishers and other parasites in the record industry took all the credit for his work and all the cash, too. He says he had 3 gold albums, no gold in the bank. It was the pits. Then Wonder Woman takes the opposite side of things and says, who cares about money? It's the happiness that you gave to others that matters. You should have just done your little singing and dancing, and who gives a shit if people make a fortune off your hard work and effort?
Granted, he may have brainwashed them into liking his music. I don't know.
That's a good question.
We'll never know.
Was he successful because of the music, or did he brainwash into success?
He turned evil only afterwards. I think he was on the straight and narrow for a while.
Elena has somehow gotten free from the velvet chair, and she comes wandering in with her giant bell-bottom pants on, and Hamlin flops down on the couch. He tells Wonder Woman he's stealing from thieves to pay creditors, but she says that doesn't make what you did to those young women right. In fact, those girls loved you and probably still do.
Why?
How dare you, sir? Hamlin puts his head in his hands and says, leave me alone.
Which is actually accurate.
Yeah, he's like a little sad boy.
And she's like, Hamlin, say you're sorry. Say you're sorry to the girls.
I just want to brainwash people with my flute again.
It takes kind of a darker turn here because Wonder Woman then says, I can leave you alone, but can you be alone with yourself?
Ooh.
And Hamlin says, I don't need anybody. And she says, that's not what your songs say. Seems to me you're afraid of being alone with your thoughts. And then Hamlin just kind of starts to cry a little.
Yeah.
He says, no, I don't know what to believe anymore. Anyway, no one cares about me. But just then a soft voice speaks up from the back. Elena says, I care about you, Hamlin.
Even though
I
you
really do.
had me prisoner for weeks and have nearly killed me with the flute hypnosis, I love you.
He's absolutely miffed by this, and he should be. But Elena says it's because he sings about what's in his heart with that one song that he didn't write. Joe then reaches out a hand to his daughter, and she embraces Dad of the Year, places her head on his chest. They're reunited. It's wonderful.
Finally.
The show then takes a turn, and I don't quite understand what goes down. We can discuss it here. Wonder Woman basically tells Joe, Hamlin could have used his evil bird statue destroying device to knock off the mint or sell to a foreign power, but he didn't. In fact, he only used it to take money that he was owed from the greedy record producers. Elena even agrees with all of this, and Wonder Woman says what those people did to Hamlin was wrong, but what Hamlin did to the girls was wrong too. And Elena says, well, you know what they say about 2 wrongs, right, Dad? Completely misinterpreting the whole point of
Right.
2 wrongs don't make a right, but that's what it is. Hamlin then does this.
Well, hey, I'm Hamlin Rule. And I'm too hip to deal with any cliches about 2 wrongs. I mean, I can't. It's not cool. I mean, what are you? What am I? 2 bummers, 2 bring downs, 2 bad scenes. Don't make it cool. 2 bad scenes. Just make
Keep going.
a fool. It's not bad. Where's that old guitar of mine?
I wish he'd burst into that fucking flute,
The same
flute melody.
one. He didn't even come up with anything new for it.
Love conquers all.
So that's going to be his new hit.
2 bad scenes.
Don't make
Fool?
or
Something
make a fool.
Cool.
Don't make a fool cool.
Was this written? Do you think this scene was written? Or did Martin Mull just say, fuck it, Let's just do whatever.
It had a lot of a fuck it feel. If it was written, I don't know how.
I'm kind of impressed.
Everyone was sitting there just kind of like, well, I guess we got to let him do what he's doing here. Like nobody said anything or talked or moved at all.
We're out of film.
While Hamlin sits strumming on his old guitar, Joe says he may have a long time to write this hit, but Wonder Woman says maybe he'll write this hit for charity.
Wonder Woman really doesn't even want Hamlin to be in any trouble.
No, she's immediately turned like full Gargantua treatment on him where it's like, just be free, Hamlin.
Yeah, the scene ends. That's that. So I don't know. Do you think he went to jail or
something happened to him? They mentioned in the very last scene that they went away for like psychiatric help or something.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I got from that.
I think the implication was that there was a chance he'd be let off scot-free because he was good in his heart.
Right. They thought maybe he just needed some therapy and some grief counseling for all the wrongs he'd been dealt, and he was going to be all right in the end.
Problem is, when he gets to that therapist or whatever and he pulls out his flute, the therapist does his bidding.
That's true.
I was a little taken aback by Wonder Woman's turn at the end there with she's going her route, her like love conquers all thing, which I know that's the thing, that's the theme in this episode, but I did not expect that she always did that with, apparently in these episodes that we watched, that's in the end, she was like, oh, no, you mean well. Things are fine. You don't need to be the bad guy.
2 for 2 at this point.
Yeah.
So I have to assume it's 100% of the time.
I guess so.
Oh, you've only killed a dozen people or so. You're fine. You keep going.
Elena, Diana, Steve, and Joe were all later walking through a park in D.C. when we find out that Elena actually planted her bracelet at the scene for her dad to find. It's kind of clever, and I think was tossed on to be like, see, she's smart.
And not bad.
Elena says she just doesn't understand why Hamlin Rule would do what he did, and Diana says she thinks she just wasn't ever content with his gift for music. After all, he had his fans in his hand while on stage, but he wanted more. He wanted their brains. And then Steve says, and their money, and they all kind of chuckle a bit. Joe says he's really going to struggle to forgive Hamlin for what he did to his daughter, but Diana says, I wouldn't be too hard on him, Joe. After all, he's just a far-out Pied Piper. Suddenly, a flute melody begins to play, and the group all nervously look towards a bush where the noise is coming from. But don't worry, it's not Hamlin Rule, the Pied Piper. It's just some weird little girl in overalls skipping and playing the flute out in public.
Yeah, and that melody sounds suspiciously like the one from Brainwashing.
This?
Yeah, that's the one.
And then she speaks aloud as she walks by, saying, I want to be the Pied Piper when I grow up.
The group breathes a sigh of relief, and Diana says, and Hamlin Rule thought he could play the flute. And then everyone laughs for some reason.
It's apparently really funny.
The show freeze frames on Diana's grinning face, and that's it. The end. We've covered 2 episodes of Wonder Woman, both fucking bonkers nuts. Let's talk about what we think of the show overall. Anybody want to start?
Sure. I really had fun watching these. They were so weird and just all over the place. Lots of memorable side characters, namely Gargantua the Ape Man and the Pied Piper Hamlin Rule. Obviously, this isn't the kind of thing I would like watch the series of, but it's not what I expected. I expected more of the kind of by-the-numbers superhero fare of today. So the bonkers nature and the 70s-ness of all of this was very fun.
Yeah, the 70s-ness overtook most everything. Honestly, what I said about Wonder Woman's costume applies to my thoughts on the show as a whole. Like, I mean, it's hideous and it's so horrible and awful in its own way that it's lovely. It just, parts of it that probably would annoy people or just not age well or whatever have so past the point of their bad aging now that it's good. It's its own, it's so ugly, it's cute sort of thing.
I think the one reason that this show is enjoyable is that every single character, every single actor, every person in the show involved with the show took it seriously.
Sure.
They don't have characters winking at the camera or doing that like, we know this is campy and goofy. They buy it. And that's just the same thing we've talked about when we talk about bad movies. A good bad movie has to be made by a person or people who think they're doing good work, and this isn't straight comparison, but then put their heart and effort into the work wholly and don't do it facetiously.
Yeah.
In the case of Wonder Woman, I mean, it's made competently. It's perfectly fine. Doesn't have a huge budget, but all of the actors and characters buy what they're doing. And I think that's what made this surprisingly fun.
Yeah, because they're buying what they're doing while understanding that the show isn't going to be played 100% straight in its production. Like, you're going to get the title cards that are a little funny and the cuts. There is an 8-man. But it all works in conjunction, in a way that makes it feels very ramshackle, like a bunch of people put it together and did it.
I think the first one fit more in with what I think Wonder Woman would have been. Not that it wasn't nuts, because it was, but it was set in the time period that the comic books were, and it involved some vicious wild animal. That's much more of a Wonder Woman plot I would have expected to be going over versus the Pied Piper, which I don't even know what that was.
Another ferocious animal.
Well, I think I mentioned earlier
it was changing for the demographics.
They changed for demographics, but also they of course changed from 40s to 70s for budgetary reasons. And the actors said that's a big reason why people didn't like the show. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The show needs to be in the 40s. That just feels like more Wonder Woman-y, even though I don't know what Wonder Woman is. It just feels that way. And I think the Hamlin Rule Pied Piper episode, it was great to us, but it's also, I think, considered like one of the worst episodes of the show.
I can see why. It's weird. A little out there. I was also, from a superhero perspective, not particularly impressed with Wonder Woman. She didn't seem like physically she did much or had to or wanted to be honest. And when the guy says Wonder Woman, bullets don't do shit against her, and like I think that's the first episode they mentioned that, or at some point it gets mentioned, and I thought, oh, so she's bulletproof. She's just that fucking tough. No, it turns out she just has things like, if you were to tell me I'm gonna make you bulletproof, here, and you
put this vest on.
It's on my wrist, and it's like all you have to do is just block the bullets now, and you'll be fine. She's bulletproof because she has some kind of freak reflex ability to block bullets as they come at her in real time with wrist guards of some sort that do that. It's not that she's actually bulletproof. So it seems like a really not a safe way to be bulletproof. If she misses one of those, she's just shot and dead.
A bit convoluted. Well, to your point about the not physically doing a whole lot, this show, actually, they didn't want to do any of the punch stuff. Again, fights with love or whatever. By the 4th season, that wacky one with the teenagers and the robots and all that, they had her a little more physical. She did a lot more fist fighting.
Yeah.
Whereas in the R2 episode, she tosses some people occasionally.
Breaks
and that was
free
by
of
default.
hugs.
Lots of hugs. Ape hugs.
Did they do the zoom out from the episode and do the speech bubble with Pow and Whap and Zam and stuff like from Batman? Because that would have been great.
And speaking of Batman, that's obviously a huge influence to the show.
You can feel it.
Did you guys ever really watch that Batman show?
As a kid, I did.
I did
with
as
Adam
well.
West, and I remembered the campiness of that, and it did show up here a lot.
And I barely remember the campiness. I'd like to see that to see how campy it is versus this show, because this show is campy, but again, takes itself seriously. I think the Batman show was campy and was camp.
I think it was just super goofy, yeah.
Do 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 do. That's my only thought. Oh, Van's gone into a trance.
All right, well, that's enough talking about Wonder Woman. It was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as well. At the end of our second episodes, when we switch hosting duties. So next time, Brian is going to be
All right,
hosting.
let me tell you guys what we're going to do.
Or you can just stop doing that.
But I have a really good plan.
It's too bad. Throw it in the garbage.
But
Let
we
me
were
get
all
my
going to
ape in
enjoy
here
it.
to steal it.
Okay.
Oh, we're not going to enjoy what we're about to do.
But we were going to.
We are doing a hot potato. We haven't done this in a while. So basically, we're going to be picking shows for each other. This time around, I'll be picking for Brian. Then Brian will be picking for Spencer. Then Spencer for me. And then we'll swap that around.
Yeah.
So I had the joy of selecting a show
We haven't done
for
this
you
in
to
a
cover.
while.
It has been a hot minute. I think it was last calendar year.
It has.
In a hot potato minute.
So let's get into this and I'll tell you what we're covering. You guys, of course, know me very well. We're all good friends. And you know one of my nicknames is the Elephant. You know why, right?
All the trunks.
It's because I never forget.
Your love of ivory.
Scared of mice.
Well, 92 episodes ago, a certain host on the show decided to choose Duck Dynasty
I don't.
Oh,
as a show for
payback.
me to
Spencer,
host.
why
it's
did you
payback.
do
How
that?
dare you? Do not besmirch Spencer's good name.
I just gave you Mission Impossible, which was way worse.
It was hard, but at least that show was fun and not fucking Duck Dynasty. Well, that certain someone, who we're obviously hinting is Brian, gave me a Steven Seagal show the next time around to try and mend bridges.
Right.
And that helped.
There were a lot of useful herbs to help you be mended.
But here's the thing. I am the elephant and I never forget.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to be... we're going...
Is this part of the show?
Hold on a minute. I got to clear this. We're going to be...
Oh, no.
Okay.
I have to do that?
Okay. We're going to be covering a show that's about the daily trials and tribulations of Tim the Tool Man Taylor, a television show host raising 3 mischievous boys with the help from his loyal co-host, loving wife, and eccentric neighbor. We're covering Home Improvement.
Holy shit.
You have to do
You want to
this.
know what, though? I'm kind of glad because I think I might know the least about it, and I'm kind of curious. Like, I don't know what goes on in it, really.
You're not going to like what goes on. I can tell you that.
Improve that home.
I have long wanted to cover this show because I think we're going to be mad and hate it.
Yeah,
but I
this-
didn't want to do it
That's
myself.
a good way to do it. Keep your hands clean.
We'll be covering our 2 episodes like usual. Our first one comes from the first season, so we'll really get a look into the early years of Home Improvement, which ran for like 9 seasons.
JTT was probably only like 2 then.
He's a little baby then.
Before he was a heartthrob.
This is season 1, episode 14, For Whom the Belch Tolls.
Ha ha ha. I
That's
get it.
some according to Jim titling.
Jill doesn't want Stu Cutler, Tim's old college friend, in the house. So Tim tries to keep him away, but when he gives in and Stu comes to the house, he insults Tim and Jill and belches with the boys.
Okay. I'm in.
Season 3, episode 20 will be our next episode. It was the best of Tim's, it was the worst of Tim's. After Tim charms all the women at a baby shower, Jill wants a romantic evening with him, but Tim instead takes the boys to a demolition derby.
Okay. I think these will be fun. We've got burping and a demolition derby.
You so seem to have this rosy outlook on
Look,
what
I've got to do
Tim
what
Allen
I've got to
think
do
could
to
be.
get through this.
This show is just man. Like, he's a real man who does man stuff, much like Jim, but I think it's worse.
Oh, I bet it will be.
And Richard Karn is.
That's
I
the
was
good
just getting ready to say it. We know a little bit more about Richard Karn than Home Improvement would have us
Sure.
know.
And, you know, we might see Pamela Anderson, who we didn't see on Baywatch.
That's true. We
which
might
is
see her
weird.
in a secondary show.
Hmm.
This is going to be interesting. I'm just going to say interesting. I'm not saying fun because I do believe you, Van, that the episodes themselves will be awful.
I imagine they'll be pretty run of the mill. It's like all that time period sitcoms are the same. I can guess how all the jokes are going to play out in both these episodes already.
Oh,
There's
yeah, you
gonna
could
be-
map it out.
There's going to be a lot of burping already. I can tell you in
Yeah.
that first one.
I guarantee there's a neighbor obscured behind a fence. That's one of the things I know.
And then a couple.
Right. That's another
That will
one.
be the part that will be hard for me. I can't stand the gimmicky comedy like that, which isn't really comedy. I hate that.
Well, remember when I spoiled the thing on your episode where we played that clip and we all lost it?
We're going to be listening to that a lot in the coming
so
days.
much. It's going to consume our lives until we record again.
So we'll be back next week with, of course, Home Improvement. From here to there, check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bootu Inc. All the videos of the old episodes on there. There's some other skits and bonus stuff and new stuff coming up all the time. BootuInc.com, that's the website where we have GIFs. I'm sure there's tons of GIFs out there, maybe even the Wonder Woman ones. By the time you hear this, just look at it. It's good for you.
Just look at it.
And like we said last episode, maybe you should leave us a rate and review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever the fuck ever place you're listening at. And if you do, we'll get flute of Hamlin Rule on our body.
Sure.
Definitely do your reviewing this week and not the next couple. No one wants to get a tattoo of Tim Allen. So
No.
let's make sure not to do any reviews. I mean, do, but just get them all in now.
What about Gargantua playing a flute?
I would totally get that.
It's even better.
I might get a tattoo of Brad from Home Improvement, but definitely not Tim. No.
What's he do?
He's one of the kids.
We're gonna
There's a
find
bunch
out.
of boys and they're all burping.
To exit, let's say your favorite 70s expression or word.
You called me a turkey. I think you meant jive turkey at the beginning,
No,
right?
I stuck with turkey. I
Okay,
knew what
well
I
that's
know
my
what I'm about.
that's my favorite 70s expression, you turkey.
How dare you? I was going to do that, Brian.
Far out, man.
Just groovy.
Wonder Woman.